Hi everyone. So I wanted to go over some things with you. As you know, today is a snow day for North Shore. Well, apparently now all classes are canceled, but day classes were canceled as of last night. And as I mentioned in my email, I know it seems weird, like I totally get it. But when it says all classes canceled, it literally means all classes canceled. So whether you're in person or virtual, we're not allowed. We're not supposed to be holding any virtual classes if there's a weather related closure, essentially. So, I have to kind of follow that rule. It's not ideal, as I mentioned, because next week I am flying out to a conference in Nashville. I'll be in conference sessions on Thursday, and this was kind of in your syllabus. It's been in your syllabus all along. We've already talked about this, but we won't be holding a Zoom next week. So I really wanted to kind of make a video and make sure that we go through a few different things. I want to bring us all back together with a few of the different assignments, what's going on, what you need to be working on, etc. Because the next time that I see you, which is March 9th, okay, yeah, March 9th, in week 6, that's actually our final class meeting. So it's super, super fast. This course, this semester, I've never taught it in such a compressed format before. But you guys are doing a lot of really amazing work, and I just want to make sure that we go through several things now. And so things are clear. So, first thing I want to emphasize with everything that I'm about to kind of go over as you're working on things more independently until March 9th, and I see you again. If you are having any trouble with anything, okay, please make sure you email me. I've gotten a couple emails with questions and I'm happy to answer. I also have this link here to my office hours appointment calendar. A lot of times my office hours do tend to land on Wednesdays and Thursdays, Wednesday mornings and like Thursdays before we have class. I think for next week, I have some Wednesday morning. I'm not flying out to Nashville until like Wednesday afternoon. I also believe I have some time on Tuesday, before I have a meeting. I think I have a meeting at like 2. So, Tuesday, like earlier in the day as well. Mondays are kind of hard because I kind of go all day Mondays. But if there's, as you're drafting, if you come up with any issues, if, Tuesday or Wednesday works for you next week, if you don't see a slot, you can email me and I'm happy to set something up with you and we can just jump on Zoom. But you do have to be proactive about that and make sure that, you're not waiting till the very last second, as I've been warning you since sort of day one of the class, right? To work on these things. So, anyhow, class today we talked about videos. So I did grade all of your videos. Honestly, they were really, really good overall. I mean, I know that it can be a little nerve-wracking. And I think, I know we did that exercise in class last week where you got to talk with a peer and probably got a little bit of feedback there as well. So, I mean, for some people, I think, right? Like that, you looked like you were reading something or, but those were like small things. Those are things you can continue to work on. A lot of you did really, really well. You included a lot of great information. There was nobody that I was like, wow, that one really needs a ton of work. I really did not think that at all. So, really nice job on those. I know you had to put yourself out there a little bit for that. So there's definitely a lot of really, really great ones as I was kind of looking through them. I think Matt was really particularly good. John, you did a nice job. There's other really good ones as well. But if you haven't looked through that board and kind of scoped out some of the things that people said, I think those are a couple good ones to look at in terms of really being specific about what your experience is, whether that's just simply from your education or also work experience, life experience, etc. Where you're going, what your goals are, those kinds of things. So those are a couple that you can look at if that's helpful to you. I also graded your mini messages and your networking lists that were due last night. So all of those that were submitted, I did go through all of those as well. Essentially, right now, there's nothing left in the grading queue at all. Your grades are totally up to date. I would recommend that you log in, go to my grades here on the left, and make sure it's set to all at the top so that you can see everything that has been graded so far and that you can see your overall weighted average. We don't have much more. I mean, the Configure project's a big part of the grade, of course. But if you've been missing things consistently all along and things, your grade's probably not looking real great right now. And you need to think about that before the class ends, in a couple weeks. So, grades are up to date. If you missed your mini message assignment that was due last night, remember I will take them until tomorrow with no penalty. After that, it earns a late penalty. So, what I want to kind of do is kind of go through week by week at this point and just kind of go through some of the things that are going on and what you should be working on. So, currently we are in week 4. This week we had some topics we were going to cover. Some of those things I'm just going to be shifting into the last class. The last class I tend to leave a little bit more open anyway because it's the last class, and anything I haven't covered I can usually go over during then. I would say if there's anything that you're like that's come up for you in the reading or come up for you personally that you're like, I really wish we could talk more about this, I really suggest that you email me about that. Just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to kind of address that in the final course. All right, when we meet for that last hour and a half or so on the last day. But this was the career networking assignment. This, you know what, we're probably just going to wait to discuss, in week 6. I'll probably move that down so we don't have to worry too much about that. Looking into week 5, what we have going on, again, there is no Zoom meeting next week because I'm in Nashville for a conference. So you're going to continue with your reading. We talked about LinkedIn profiles a couple of weeks ago, so it's finally due. A couple of you have already submitted the link to this. So all you're going to do in week 5 is you're going to come in here and literally pop the link in. Just make sure, I know that there's certain settings you can tweak and stuff. Just make sure it's visible to me. And then, grade for that. So that's kind of a smaller-ish thing, unless you're completely doing it from scratch, which even then I don't think it takes that long, but making sure that you have your LinkedIn profile up and running. So career portfolio draft, what's going to happen with this next week? So your final portfolio that I'm going to put an actual grade on is due at the end of week 6, and I will not accept them past the date that they are due in week 6, which is, let's just take a look at that. Saturday 3/11, because at that point the class is over, like the entire course is over. So you will want to make sure that you are ready by March 11th to completely submit and be fully, happy with what you're submitting for your final career portfolio. In week 5, because of that, I want to make sure that you get some feedback on a draft. So it might not be fully developed, you might not have everything up yet, but the idea is that if you can get some really good feedback on how you're doing, then hopefully that means that you are on the right track and you will do well on it. So I'm going to pause there for a second, and I'm actually going to bring up over here on the left the career portfolio project assignment sheet. So if you haven't taken a run through this again lately, I do know a lot of you have been working on this, so that's great. And we've already discussed this, but if you haven't, you really need to come back to this and basically kind of use this section as like a checklist. So this is, the most basic requirements. And you can read, but photo and contact info, LinkedIn site. I'm going to go over a couple of the portfolio models again with you really briefly in this video so that you have those reference points again. And we did do this, I think, in like week 2, but I'll show you again. General introduction to who you are, skills overview somewhere, a resume, letters of reference, okay, or 3 references. So you can make an actual reference list with 3 references listed on them. And that's in your reading that you've been completing for this course. If you don't have that yet, you want to make sure that you do have a references list. The people that you put on that list should be people that can really speak to your skills and they know that they are your references. You would never give someone's name out for a reference without asking them first. So you also could substitute that or do both. It's up to you. If you have letters of actual reference, you can post those in lieu of that reference sheet. So whichever one is like better for you at this point, make sure when you list your 3 references that they are people, again, that you've worked with, professors, people that are professional. It's not like a family friend or your mom or things like that. I do see that sometimes. So just make sure, you also want to describe like what their position is, how you know them, in what context, and then make sure that you have up-to-date information for them. Usually an email and a phone number is appropriate, okay? Minimum of 2 examples of your work sample projects. I know I've talked to some of you about this. For some of you, this is a really easy thing to do. For some of you, you're thinking, some of you are actually still thinking about what field you're going into. So you don't have the appropriate or relatable work yet, and that's fine. You do think about other things that can demonstrate your skills. So maybe it is something from work that you've done in another field that you can talk about how those skills relate, carry over. Maybe it's something like a writing sample. It's something from other even gen ed classes that you've done that demonstrates some kind of skill that you might need in your new field. Okay. So this can be pretty open. To interpretation, and the goal is to show me that you can get things on there, the better related the better, but you can also have a conversation with me about that, and if they're not super related but it's all you have for right now, that's something that can always change, right, as time goes on. So that's, as you get closer to getting your job in your field, etc., you can always swap those out. Okay. Online, so this is for a maximum of a B, okay? If you do above and beyond, there's other things that you can add in. We've had conversations about this already. So above and beyond these basic requirements, you can also add things within these categories or something else that you might think of that I haven't thought of yet, okay? That's appropriate, all right? And that can help you get up into the A range, okay? So there's some reminders there. I think the big reminder about the Google portfolio is you're working in a Google platform. When you're uploading documents into it, I know a lot of you have been doing this already, you have to have them saved as Google Docs first, which means you have to make sure that the permissions are on. So you have to make sure that, like, I'm in a Google Doc right now, right? When you go to share, I've set it so that it's anyone with the link and that they are a viewer. I don't want them to be able to comment or edit, but I want them to view. Okay. And you have to make sure you do that for every individual document that you have. Otherwise, if it was set to either of these things, it's going to be problematic when people try to look at your work. Okay. As far as the overall portfolio goes, you do have options for sharing and publishing, which we've kind of talked about before, and we can come back to. But just remember that each individual document, like let's say your resume is in a Google Doc and you're uploading that into the portfolio, you have to make sure I can see it, okay, or it will give an error message. And those are things we're kind of looking for next week with the draft to kind of see, hey, as a viewer, I can't see this, fix this, etc. And then this is the scoring for that you want to review again. So again, all of that stuff in here is available to you, tutorial wise, etc. So next week, next Wednesday is the 1st, okay, and I ask you to post a draft of your career portfolio, and I just want to check one thing on the syllabus while we have it up. Oh, due Sunday. Okay, so I have it in here, but I didn't post it in here, so I'll fix that afterwards as well. Bring this over. So this is the discussion board that's up for next week. By Wednesday 3/1, you want to post a draft of your career portfolio here to the discussion board. All right, and make sure that it is viewable by anyone with the link. Okay. What's going to happen is you're going to see the board fill up. Obviously, there's nothing in here now, but it's going to look like what you did in week 1. Let me pull that up. You can't. Just kidding. This one. So see how everybody's lovely names are here. What's going to happen is you're going to post by next Wednesday. And then sometime between then and Sunday of that week, I want you to go in and choose one student on the board to respond to. And there is a feedback form you'll use for that. I'll bring that up in a second. But when you see everybody's names and projects on the board, what the best way to kind of go about this is to not just pick randomly, but as you can see that the people down at the bottom are actually the first people that posted. So if you start at the bottom and you click in and you see that nobody has responded to that first student at the bottom yet, then that's yours to respond to. Sometimes students will make a post and say, hey, I'm working on this one right now. So if someone else is logging in, they'll say, oh, okay, I'm going to go to the next one. Whatever works. But you should start at the bottom, go in, respond to that person, post your feedback, and that's it. But what I see sometimes happen with this sort of exercise is students go in and they're like, oh, I know this person all the way to the top, so I'll do them. And then everybody's just jumping in all over the board. And then there's inevitably people that get skipped, which I think is not the fairest. So if we all start from the bottom and go up, then it works out a little bit better most often. So hopefully that makes sense. Inevitably, it's probably likely that somebody will get skipped. It's just the way it works out with this exercise, but I'm hoping that everybody can get some feedback. You will also get some feedback from me. So let me go back to that discussion board, week 5. So you will get some feedback from me. It comes in on Wednesday. I will be giving them feedback. I don't get back until like Saturday. So I might be able to get to the feedback over the weekend. If I don't, I'll certainly do it first thing like the following week. So you'll get your peer feedback first, you'll get my feedback, and then you'll still have time to improve and make sure that everything's in good shape before you submit your final draft on the 11th. Okay. So this is where you're posting. Here's your feedback form. This is what you're going to use. You can, just copy this if you want. You can click File, make a copy here to get your own copy of this document, which you can then use to respond to your peers' work, whichever is most appropriate. So what I want you to do is to kind of go through very explicitly looking at those requirements for the peer review, for the career project, and do they have a professional photo and contact info? Yes, I see your photo, but your contact info is missing. Is there a link to the LinkedIn site? Yes. Okay. And so do they have these things? Yes or no? You can make some comments if something's unclear, if you can't read it, if it doesn't look organized, etc. What additional items are included in the portfolio? Can you jot those down and give some feedback on those? I really liked how you added additional pictures of blah, blah, blah. I also saw that you added in an extra writing sample. I think that makes sense, or whatever. And then what do you think of the overall design of the portfolio? Does it flow well? Is it organized? Is it interesting enough? What needs to be improved? Does it look professional? So certainly, this is constructive criticism, right? But hopefully sometimes it takes a second pair of eyes even to just identify, oh man, I didn't even realize I was missing that one thing. So hopefully this, it shouldn't be a super long exercise to do, but hopefully you guys can help each other out in that way. And that's what you're working on for week 5. Okay. And that would have been something we would have done in Zoom had we had a Zoom class. All right. So that's basically week 5. Week 6 is going to be our final week. One thing I do want to mention, I'm going to talk a little bit about in this video now to sort of wrap up, I believe, is resumes. Okay, so you have resumes are included in chapter 10, which is some reading that you have upcoming. You want to make sure that you probably already all have a resume. You want to make sure that it's updated for the current point in time that you are at now. All right, so. Oh, and I will show you the examples, actually, the career projects. I'm trying to keep on track of everything I want to tell you guys. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about resumes as well, just some general ideas, because I won't see you again before this particular assignment is due. So keep in mind there are some really great models and rules and discussions of resumes in Chapter 10. I do recommend that you check it out. Some general thoughts that I usually cover with resumes. One is that objectives and references are out of date at this point. Many of you might already know that, but that little objective of what you're looking for at the top is not relevant anymore. We don't do that. We also we don't write at the bottom like references upon request or include references on the actual resume itself. So we don't do either of those things any longer. Okay. In place of an objective at the top, you can see some examples in the book. You can include like a little mini message or summary about yourself or what you're looking for, what your goals are, what you're passionate about, something that's more relevant to that, but not objective, looking for a job in the teaching field, or we don't do that anymore. Okay. In your resume, you should have, when it comes to your address, you should only have city and state only. Okay. You do not need any other identifying information, like your actual street number. That's not appropriate to do anymore. So you can take that out. You want to make sure that you have an appropriate email address to use, all right, for professional communication. The structure of the resume, while you are in school, any kind of school, your education should come up top with the expected graduation date, all right, listed. Um, Once you graduate and you're in the field for a little bit, the education actually will move to the bottom of your resume. So, my 15 years of experience teaching certainly trumps the fact that I have degrees. So that it kind of flip flops as time goes on. But currently, all of you are enrolled in a program, so you should have that at the top. Um, Obviously, anything related to high school at this point really doesn't matter. So some of you that are only in your, maybe second semester, a lot of you might still have high school information on the resume. That's really not relevant. Once you get to college, high school doesn't actually really matter anymore. And so you can take that out. My only thing that I would say that might be a little off from that is if you went to like a technical high school or specialized high school and you feel like those skills are like super relevant, like it would be really helpful for an employer to know. And then lastly, resumes, when you're talking about the jobs, which should be in reverse chronological order, right? You should start with the most recent and go backwards down the resume. Really should demonstrate achievement, what you brought to the table, what you accomplished, what you were able to do to like help that company. Not necessarily just what your duties were. And people struggle with that a lot. There's a lot of great models in your book. You can certainly look up templates online too for showing, resumes demonstrating accomplishment. But instead of saying, I was a waitress and I bussed tables and I managed money and gave customer service, what did you actually do for them? So, maybe you handled, a rotation of 7 tables each evening. You were able to effectively communicate menu details to, patrons and diners, etc. So you have to kind of think through that a little bit. It goes without saying, I think, too, that your resume should be perfect in terms of grammar and spelling, etc. If that's not your wheelhouse, then you definitely should be getting someone to review it, all right, whether that's going to the tutoring center or somebody that you know that can proofread it, but there should not be any errors whatsoever, okay, in your resume. So I just wanted to show you a couple examples, tracking back to the career portfolio for a second. So I want to show you, I've already showed you these, but just as a quick reference again. All right, so Ariana was one, so garden design. Okay, and we talked about, especially if you're including pictures and work samples and stuff, it is a good idea to add some commentary about why they're here. You don't want to just let the viewer kind of interpret everything for themselves. So she had a recent work section, which was a lot of different pictures and information. She kind of made some slideshows here, okay, of her work. Skills and services was one other section. Okay, just kind of a overview here. Her resume was posted. Your resume is one of the required pieces. All right, we can see her information, education at the top, work experience, etc. References, she has the list of references, okay, and she needed to add in the phone numbers still, but that's something I would still add that little sentence like below each of these people to say, worked with Judith for 5 years at blah, 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 or, interned under Sarah, etc. I think that gives anybody cold calling your references would have some more information about what to say. And then there's a contact page here. We have phone, we have email, we have LinkedIn. Okay. So that was one. I don't think I have anyone in graphic design this semester, which is actually kind of surprising because I usually have quite a few of them. But this was Alyssa's graphic design portfolio. And so, this is actually doesn't look like it, but it is a link to her profile, LinkedIn. A little bit about herself. We have the resume. We have, and actually, I want to go back to her resume. Some of the things I mentioned, like taking out the address, should be gone. But otherwise, she put some skills here down the side, certificates. I think that's really smart if you're in a field where you need certificates and you have some. Languages, particularly if you are bilingual or trilingual, as Alyssa is, you should definitely highlight some of these things as well. Or projects or volunteer work can go at the bottom. Typically, resumes should be kept to one page. That can be really a challenge to do sometimes. So, you really want to really keep it really short and sweet as much as possible, and, really hone in on the relevant stuff. So we have her projects and work. So this is what I'll see if I can't access one of your materials, okay? Which you don't want to happen. I'm sorry if you can hear my son yelling in the background. Snow day, driving me crazy. Skills, references, okay, recommendations. So she has it in a couple places. She has the references list, and she also has recommendation letters, and then she has the certifications. And again, this might not all apply to you guys. You might have different things, different sections. But you can see how this achieves the minimum requirements of what I asked for in different ways, and then also went above and beyond in different ways as well. Okay. So let me check my list here. I think that covers everything I want to go over with you all. But I can't reiterate enough. Just be proactive if you're struggling with this. The students who leave it to the very last week or don't get the draft up and don't get feedback and all of that, that's when it really becomes problematic, and it is a pretty big chunk of your grade going forward. So just remember that you have this that you can follow. Your syllabus, we're in week 4. Here's what's due. Week 5, here's what's due. Week 6, that's what's due in a couple of weeks when I see you again. Okay. So reach out if you have any questions or concerns. You guys are many of you are doing really, really well, really great. And keep it up. All right. And I hope you enjoy your weekend.